Let's see. Dusting off some of my old movies. I think there's one that turns 40 years old this year. Oh, it's this one. Psycho 2. Psycho 2. It's 40 years old this year. Yeah. Hey guys, Scott Player, Pop Cult fan here, and in this video, I want to do a bit of a review, I think retro rerun review, might as well, because this movie, it was, it's an old film, came out in 1983, and I feel like I want to do a full, proper review of Psycho 2. I think there's definitely a lot to talk about in regards to the very first sequel to the original Psycho. It's definitely a worthy follow-up. I mean, I don't think it surpasses the original Hitchcock film in any way. I'm not saying that, but it's a decent sequel. It's one of the better horror sequels out there in regards to all these different horror franchises that existed. And Psycho 2, it came out like 3 years after Friday the 13th. So there's something about that I think is really interesting. I think what they do with this film in regards to being a sequel, it's interesting because they sort of do a whodunit story predating the Scream movies. Within the story, I think it's interesting what they do, and how Norman Bates, he's finally out of, I guess, the psych ward or prison or jail that he was in. They let him out, and certain people are not happy about that. Vera Miles' character from the original film comes back in this film, and she's a very angry kind of a woman, and she doesn't like that Norman's back, and that's sort of how the story starts. And then we get introduced to Meg Tilly's character, Jennifer Tilly's sister. Jennifer Tilly's sister, Meg Tilly, was in this movie before Jennifer Tilly was ever, cast as Tiffany in the Chucky movies. So yeah, the Tillys, they're both actresses, and Meg Tilly, I think it's an interesting what they do with her character in this film, in a way that sort of ties, because her character is related to Vera Miles, their mother and daughter, and it's interesting what they do there and with the story, and also how there's this whole mystery going on with who's killing people in this film, and it's not Norman. I think this is the first film out of all of them where Norman is not killing anyone, at least until the very end. And it's interesting, they sort of play with Norman's mental instability in this film, and you see how he starts to fall back, how he starts to go back to his old ways by the end of the film. And this is an old movie, so I imagine that it should be okay talking about spoilers. So, but I mean, for those of you that may not have seen it, I guess I'll, put a spoiler warning in the title. But yes, I think this is a film that was actually written by Tom Holland, not who you think. Tom Holland, he directed the original Child's Play movie. He's the horror director who's much older. He wrote the script for this movie, Psycho 2, and also Jerry Goldsmith, he did the music for this movie. Granted, there are some tracks in this movie that aren't too great, but I find it interesting that they got Jerry Goldsmith to do the score of this movie, because he was already very well known for doing the original score for the original Planet of the Apes, and also the original Alien movie, which I believe came out in 1979. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that they got him to score this movie. And Dean Cundey, the cinematographer, he did a lot of classic movies, the original Halloween, the original Jurassic Park, and Dean Cundey, the cinematographer, he's also worked as a cinematographer on The Mandalorian. So he's still doing his thing. It's really cool. So yeah, there's a lot about Psycho 2 that's still worth talking about even to this day. I definitely think this is probably my favorite sequel of the three that were made, between Psycho 2, Psycho 3, and Psycho 4: The Beginning. Psycho 2, it's easily my favorite out of the three sequels. And obviously, Anthony Perkins, he's an amazing actor as Norman Bates. You love, you sympathize with the character, and you feel bad for him throughout the course of this film, and you just, but there's also that side of him that starts to fall back to how he was before, and how also the memories of his past from the original film haunting him near the beginning of the movie. And I think that was done decently well, and how that was an interesting kind of a theming there within the story, and how memories can still haunt people even after a very long period of time. And that theming continues in Psycho 3, which Anthony Perkins also directed. And he's such a great actor, but in regards to Psycho 3, I don't like that movie quite as much as this one. But Psycho 2, I think it builds up to the twists near the end, where you find out who the real killer is. And this is literally in the last few minutes of the movie. The real killer is Norman's supposed real mother. That wasn't Norma, some other woman. And it was, the twist is a little bit confusing, but this other woman that was claiming to be Norman's real mom, and how she was sort of Norma's sister. And it's kind of a weird twist, I'm not gonna lie, but it was decently executed for the most part. And then Norman knocks her out, and then I guess kills her, and also the last couple minutes of this movie, Norman slips back to his old ways as a mother, and which sort of sets up the next film, Psycho 3, and he starts killing people again in the third film. So there is that. And there's an element of this movie where 1980s prime the golden period of slashers. I think there is one particular scene in Psycho 2 that definitely harkens back to Friday the 13th, where there's these two teenage kids that go into the fruit cellar, and they get killed by the killer. So that was sort of a nod to the Friday the 13th movies in a way, having that scene. And I really do think that this is a decent follow-up to the original film. Still inferior to the original film, but it is the best sequel out of the three. And I just really enjoy it. It's a decent film. I'd probably give this movie, I think probably a B+. I give Psycho 2 B+. Yeah, that's my grade. It's funny because I've also been rewatching the Bates Motel TV show again, and I just, I think it's a good time to talk about Psycho 2. The movie's 40 years old this year, and yeah, a decent film. This will go into my playlist of Retro Rewind reviews. So yeah, that should do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.